experienced high foreclosure and unemployment. What will you do to support increased affordable and accessible housing throughout the state?
At the risk of sounding like a broken record, I intend to make Michigan the #1 place in the country to do business because that means jobs. And when people have jobs, they generally can afford their homes. And they can afford their rent, they can afford their mortgage payment. So this is the #1 thing we have to do is put people back to work. Also, of course, we have to deal with the predatory practices that have been taking place now that is sort of legend in the mortgage industry. That involves the federal government and the state government and getting tough with regulation. And again here, where we have jurisdiction, I mean, I will be there. Where we don't, I'll be in Washington fighting for effective regulation, for protection, so that our people are not preyed upon. The practices that took place by these mortgage folks was absolutely criminal. It was absolutely obscene that has been documented. And in fact, in my city, we're looking at targeting those people and going to court. We're working with other city attorneys, other cities, to see if we can't have a class action because of the way people were targeted. Certain parts of our population were targeted and gone after and preyed upon. So we have to protect our people, and we continue to work in Lansing with our public housing entity, with MSHDA, to put all dollars available for affordable housing. We have worked with the federal U.S. Interagency Council Against Homelessness to address the long-term issues facing the homeless. We obviously, of course, support a number of shelters as well, but we're trying to look at permanent solutions for permanent housing for people, and that would be a priority statewide as well. And again, it's about leveraging assets. It's about not leaving dollars on the table. We leave, over at the state capitol, we're leaving something like close to $2 billion on the table in social service money because we haven't properly leveraged those dollars that are available. Whether you're talking about earned income tax credit or other dollars, sometimes the state has to put up money in order to get money back from the federal government. We have to be smart about that. We can't leave money on the table, and we're doing that too often. So that's money that can be applied to help our people and has to be a priority.
Thank you. Dan?
Home foreclosures are undermining the integrity of our neighborhoods all across this whole state, really all across the country. What's interesting is that many communities have been dealing with this problem for a long, long time, and suddenly, because it's a problem in San Diego, we suddenly have this national crisis, right? I think a couple things. One, there's nothing that will replace getting the federal government re-engaged in doing its job by regulating those financial institutions that have preyed upon so many Americans. There's consequences to bad policy decisions. And you can see at the federal level, the determination that the Republicans had to deregulate and essentially take the controls off that lending industry has led to all of this. I mean, starting with that. We're all dealing with the consequences now. As the county treasurer, I took some of the proceeds that come from our re-engineered land bank system and opened a full-time foreclosure prevention office in my office. We saved 3,100 families from foreclosure. What I think we have to do now is press hard to intervene, legislatively require, statutorily require mandatory counseling prior to foreclosure actions. What we have found is that when people understand their rights and when they have somebody who's willing to go to bat for them, most all of the time we can fix the problem. We can prevent the home foreclosure from taking place. We can restructure the debt. But we also have to work hard and fight hard to make sure that mortgage lenders and servicers don't get to do what they're doing right now in Michigan and in every other state, and that is privatize their profits.
1 minute.
They privatize their profits and they socialize their losses. Because what happens now, we pay the price of their bad business decisions. How do we pay the price? Because of those vacant, abandoned, forgotten homes that they foreclose upon. But in places like Flint and parts of other cities all across the country, Detroit, Saginaw for sure, probably even some in stronger market areas like Lansing, those abandoned properties are of such value that the mortgage lender says, you know, I'm going to sell the ones I can sell. I'm going to collect what I can collect from the people who can pay. And for the rest of the inventory that I already made money on, I'm simply going to allow that cost to fall to our cities, into our counties, into the state. So what I've proposed, I've already talked to our legislators back home, I know you'll help me with this. We want to go after those lenders. We want to go after those lenders so that we can do more than just foreclose on the taxes that they fail to pay, but I want to be able to reach into their pockets to get back the money that places like Flint and Lansing and Detroit and Saginaw are having to pay to deal with their failures. Take not just the tax foreclosure and in rem action, but an in personam action to reach into other assets that they have to compensate us for the fact that they've stuck us with these costs.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stu. I was just reminding you that he saved a minute at the beginning of the
You're going to make one heck of a lieutenant governor, Al. Only reason I said that is that she did me a wonderful gesture by, when asked once who would, and I would be honored. If she were to ask me if she wins this nomination.
Let's take it as a joke.
Whose time does that come out?
Mayor Bernero.
Yes.
It'll come out of my time. Thank you. Alma, you're up.
Thank you, Stu, for being so gracious. You know, you've heard two very good answers to this this problem, and as state government, we've done some legislation in the area of foreclosures and moratoriums on foreclosure. We have certainly not done enough. 33% of our homeless people, over 33%, are children. And that has an impact on their health and on their education. And when we destroy their opportunities because we have failed to act to prevent foreclosure, to take the banks to task, that is also a transfer of social costs to the state and the city and the county. Our county here in Washtenaw has a tremendous program that echoes the one that Dan has spoken about in Genesee County, and our treasurer is to be complimented for being available for counseling for people facing foreclosure. I had a constituent come to me who was facing foreclosure, but she had a mortgage payment lined up and a new mortgage company lined up. But the company that has probably been the most predatory in the state of Michigan is Trout & Trout. And they would not answer a phone call from my office to talk about how we could make a payment in full through this other mortgage company so that she could stay in her condominium. She was forced out, she was evicted, the condominium stood empty, drug dealers moved in, the neighbors were punished because Trout & Trout didn't want to negotiate with the county or the resident to turn this around. They are predatory. We do need to reclaim our money. We have no clawback provisions in our laws on how we get our dollars back from these companies. So Dan, if you've got legislation, send it my way. We'll get busy introducing it. But we have to remember that there are consequences to these terrible policies. And as Virg Bonero said, I will be in Washington, D.C. if we have to go there to get policy changes, but it is regulation. And you hear that our members of Congress are beginning to step away from their opportunity to regulate the banks and the financial industry. And we have to hold their feet to the fire, because if we let them step back, we lose. There are many things that the state can't do with these federally licensed banks and financial institutions. We can certainly work with our own. But we need to have a level playing field for the citizens across the board, and that's going to take cooperation between the federal government and the state.